new report vividly portrays the Japanese government's fears in the first hours and days after the March 11, 2011, tsunami overran the coastal nuclear power plant, including concerns that officials might have to evacuate Tokyo. The government was afraid that a demonic chain reaction would ensue after the meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, even as it assured the public that all was under control, according to the report by the Rebuild Japan Initiative Foundation, a private policy group. At one point, advisors to then Prime Minister Naoto Kan began referring to a worst-case scenario that would not only force the evacuation of tens of millions of Tokyo residents, but could also cause widespread environmental damage across Japan, the report says. At the same time, Kan's staff continued to assure the Japanese public and the international community that the situation was under control.
Well, this is an interesting development here, and what you just heard is essentially a summary of a new report that has just been issued, a very lengthy 6-month investigation with 30 independent researchers and academics and lawyers and journalists looking into the situation that occurred there. So it's a disturbing report, really, because essentially the Japanese, according to this report, were just highly unprepared to deal with a situation such as the tsunami that hit Japan. The existence of a nuclear power plant on the coast was a decisive factor in the high level of concern and panic, because essentially the other damage, although enormous, loss of life, great, loss of property and so on, significant, obviously a nuclear power plant meltdown, which actually occurred, is one of those catastrophic scenarios that nobody wants to face. And so the report in question here basically raises a lot of questions about the capacity both of the power plant management as well, clearly, of the Japanese government's ability to respond to this. It raises significant questions about the Japanese government's preparedness before the tsunami hit, which was distressingly inaccurate in terms of how high, for example, the seawalls would have to be that protected the tsunamis. There was almost no governmental oversight of the nuclear power plant and of the company that runs the Tokyo power system. For example, they had not really prepared for alternative sources of electricity and power to basically manage the cooling of the power plant should a tsunami hit. So the biggest problem, of course, was that so much of the power plant was damaged. There was really no way to deal with it. And so it required these odd emergency ad hoc procedures that didn't seem to have been practiced very well. And besides that, of course, we now have some what we would call kind of follow-on information about the debris field that is now in the Pacific Ocean, which adds a different dimension to our discussion. That is, of course, something that we're very interested in, which is the whole issue of the gyres, the ocean currents, and of marine debris. So let me just show you a little clip here of of sort of where that's at, and then I'll come back and give you a little wrap-up comment.
When the Japanese tsunami wiped out entire villages last year, 4 to 8 million tons of debris swept into the Pacific. From automobiles to fishing boats, the ocean carried it away. Much of it sank close to shore, but oceanographers estimate 1 to 2 million tons is still floating. A computer-generated model shows how the debris has now spread past Midway Island across an ever wider section of the Pacific as currents carry it toward Hawaii and the west coast of North America. Oceanographer Nicholas Mallows has been tracking its movement.
It's not a floating mass of trash, or debris I should say, but rather it is dispersed over a large region of the Pacific Ocean.
Mallows says the floating remnants of the tsunami are so dispersed it's hard to distinguish from other floating trash. It's estimated that some of the debris could show up on the Hawaiian coast early next year, and by 2014 could reach the mainland, most likely Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. Oceanographers say, however, that 95% of the tsunami debris is destined to be caught up in the circular currents of the Pacific, never making it here to shore. But somewhere along the American coast, the remains of fishing boats or the wreckage of lost homes will wash ashore, along with other remnants of Japan's terrible loss. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.
And that's the
So I guess from my perspective, for you, the takeaway and the lesson of all this is that besides all of the laws and policies, regulations, and kind of coastal management and sort of infrastructure, the scientific research that people like you and I do on oceans and coastal zones, one of the things that is absolutely crucial in securing the coastal areas and the near coastal oceans, and in making progress towards improving the environmental conditions and the structural stability of coastal zones, is government capacity. I'm a political scientist, and we don't often talk enough, I think, here about the necessity of government to be extremely efficient, government to be extremely organized, proactive, collaborative, to have strong regulatory links to important non-governmental entities, nuclear power plants, and all kinds of other organizations, to have excellent forecasting and future projection capacity. I teach a whole class on projecting the future, on futurology. We talk about Waterworld, the movie that kind of projects what's may happen, of course, maybe not happen in the future, but the ability to predict, if this happens, then that happens, and what do we need to do to be prepared for it, is crucial and vital. And it really appears that the Japanese government was not prepared for that the Japanese government was essentially incompetent and was behind the eight ball, as they say, and even to this day has not actually issued a significant sort of after the fact report. There is a discussion about how 2 years after a tsunami response warning in Hawaii, the government of the state of Hawaii, for example, has not issued a report on how well the Hawaiian tsunami alert worked, what didn't work, why there were a lot of boats and other property on the coastal zone that were damaged. This is in particular a report about a tsunami warning after an earthquake in Chile in South America on February in 2010. And the whole issue of how you can anticipate a tsunami, what the metrics are, when do you want to evacuate large numbers of people, when do you not need to evacuate a large number of people, is still an inexact science, and we haven't made much progress in it. And this is something that I think that we ought to concentrate on more. Frankly, I think the whole community of coastal zone management people and coastal planners and so on has been remiss and has neglected the necessity of researching and of understanding state, by that I mean government, or state as in the state of Hawaii, capacity building related to a lot of different issues on the coastal zone. I think we're still doing a lot of this stuff on an ad hoc basis, kicking back, putting our feet up on the table, drinking a cup of coffee, and sort of ignoring the necessity of really drilling down and having a very robust and a very aggressive planning process for the coastal zones of, well, the United States, but certainly all coastal countries need to have this sort of thing. So I thought I'd share this information with you because it is, in fact, pretty crucial, and it's right down my alley, which is public administration, public policy, planning, and so on the other hand. This is not biology. This is not oceanography. It's not, mangroves, directly mangroves and studying, scientific coastal issues. It's political science and management science. And the case of Japan is somewhat chilling, I think. Thanks a lot. See you on the internet.